Hi everyone, two-part video today. We're going to be covering the questions that were asked in the previous video quickly, and then we're going to be moving on to the watercolour that I did of the oil painting I did in the last video too. So it should be fun. Okay, I've got myself a cup of coffee. I'm in my £10 chair I got off Facebook for my studio, so if I get oil paints all over it doesn't matter, and I'm relaxing now, so it's great. It makes such a difference to have somewhere comfortable to sit in your studio. I know I don't have a big studio, in fact I have a micro studio. It's very small. It's quite long, but it's very narrow at one end, and that's where I paint. But I've managed to get my chair, a big huge painting table really, and a full-size Maybeth easel, so it can be done, and there's still plenty of space, so I'm really pleased. But it's a tiny area. First question is, and that leads me on to that, a lady, Shannon Odell, asks about my painting setup, my paints, my studio, my easel, my lights. Now that's a separate video, and I'm going to do that in a week, 10 days. It will be another video. It'll probably not be, because there's going to be videos every Saturday or Sunday. I'm not sure which day they'll go out, but it'll be either a Saturday or Sunday, once a week definitely. And there may well be a midweek video too, but I can't guarantee the midweek video because obviously I've got work. I'm off work at the moment because I'm on my holidays, but I can't guarantee the midweek video, but there will be. And I think the studio setup tour and paints and all that sort of stuff will come under a midweek one in the next couple of weeks. So Shannon, I've noted it and it's on its way. Let's get straight into the questions. Just have a slurp of coffee. Not a dry mouth. Okay, Patricia from Langer Arts. The other one is, I use linseed oil to thin my medium down. Now I don't use a lot of linseed oil because it increases the drying time of the painting, and B, it makes a kind of a slippery surface to paint on, and I like the paint to grip the board. I'm not too keen on it sort of sliding around on the layers. So now that might be my inexperience there of painting, I don't know. But overall, it's all about sort of, I tend to just use a little bit of water and that's it. Again, we go back to the principle, it's fat over lean. So if you start off with a watery layer, you want to put, you can put a thicker layer on top of that. But if you then put a watery layer on top of the thicker layer, it probably wouldn't stick properly, but it's not good for the drying process, and you could get cracking in the future and stuff like that. So it's fat over lean is the but there's loads of videos on YouTube and they can explain an awful lot better than I can if you're interested in that. I don't find it a problem, and it's not something, I don't paint that thickly actually, I paint quite thinly, so it's not a problem for me. Let's just have a look. So I said, yeah, and I mix the linseed with 50-50 of water. I don't use a pure linseed oil, I mix it with water. When you do mix it, it will go kind of like a white colour, you get like an emulsion I guess, and you get a white, it turns white, but it stays in my little jar, no problem at all, and it just gives me enough, but it doesn't increase that drying time by too much. Okay, Gary Sams. Oh well, Gary Sams asked a very similar question about drying time. Yeah, as I'm painting, when I do my first layer in the morning, well, any time in the morning, but when I start the painting, I use a water for that first layer, and that is often sort of touch dry within an hour, 2 hours. But then when you come to do the subsequent layers and you paint in a thicker way, it will stay workable for 3-4 days, I would say. And then it would become too stiff, too difficult to work. You'd have to wait for it to dry properly, or just use a fatter layer on top of that if you want to do so. It's sort of stuck to it, no problem at all. So yeah, the drying time is basically 2 weeks. It takes for a painting to dry to where I get to varnish it. It's about 2 weeks, and then because it's touch dry, I use Gamvar varnish, which the manufacturers say as long as your painting's touch dry, it's good to go. But again, I think varnishing paintings is another video. I'm still experimenting with the varnishing process, so I'm not qualified to sort of give that information at the moment. But there is lots of videos out there that can tell you about that on YouTube, and a lot better than I can. So I hope that helps, Gary. Okay, Zoe Hitchhikes, fantastic name. I like it a lot. I just said about the totally dry in 2 weeks and ready to varnish. Paint thinly. I'm just going. Linseed oil takes longer to dry. Yeah, I've covered the first 3 things she asked in my last answer. She asked, do I premix all my colours before I start to paint? No, I don't. I mix on the go, as they say. Some artists do, but I'm not that organised. I'm impatient to get going. When I get in the morning, I'm at my best first thing, and I don't want to spend time sort of going through the whole painting trying to mix a whole range of colours. Then you've got these blocks of colours mixed up, and you've got no room on your palette for anything else. And B, I just like to mix on the go, because sometimes my ideas change as I'm painting. I might have mixed all these set colours, and then I don't want to use them. I want to go a different direction with the painting. So no, I don't personally. I might mix a couple. I might mix a sky colour and a distant hill colour or something if there's one in the first instance. But then I go on to mixing all my colours as I need them. I don't. I don't mix all my colours basically. And she also asks, I'm assuming it's a woman, holding the brush, because the handles are longer, how do I find that and working at arm's length? Well, actually I find holding the brushes works really, really well. Because I struggle, reason I try to move away from watercolours, not completely, but having a break from them, so mixing it up with the oils and the watercolours, is because I was struggling with my eyesight. I'm okay at sort of longer distance, not great, but okay. But short distance, I'm hopeless. And I was kind of really hunched over the paper, and I was getting a stiff neck, and I was getting an aching back. I couldn't move around. I find oil paints gives me the freedom to move around, to keep my shoulders moving so they don't get stiff. I can work at arm's length, and I can do this with a brush, and I find it a lot better. It's a kind of, I find oil painting a more of an energetic way of painting, because I stand. You don't have to stand and paint, but I do. I choose to, and there's a lot more for me personally. There's a lot more arm movement, and I just feel freer. I don't feel that I was struggling a little bit with those small strokes that sometimes watercolor demands. But saying that, when you see the video in a minute, I really enjoyed painting this watercolor. So we'll see. So yeah, no, just go back. I find using the brushes really easy, or easier than I thought I would, to be honest. They've got a long handle and plenty of room to hold it. You can hold it nearer the brush end or further back if you want to. Entirely your preference. But I would say try and use your whole arm to draw when you draw, and just keep it really basic. But in future videos, as my experience grows, you'll see all those processes, and I'll show you my drawing process, and we'll see how I'm getting on. As some people have said, I have got obviously a big head start, the fact I can paint watercolour, so it wouldn't be so easy for somebody just starting out painting, because I know the colour and I know about value and all those sorts of things. So my paintings have definitely got a head start, and that's why I've taken to oil quite well, relatively easily I should say. But saying that, there's a long way to go, because I get a lot hit and miss basically. But yeah, so that's the answer really. So let's not mess about any longer. We've got the video coming up now of the watercolour I did, of the oil painting I did a week ago. A lot of people said they wanted to see that, so I've made a little video. I'll be talking over it. I painted it and talked over it. It's very loose painting. It didn't take long. I think the painting time for the whole thing was about 30 minutes, and it was just a sketch. And it's the first watercolour I've done for I don't know how long, a long time, and so because of that I was quite pleased. But we'll have a look at it anyway, and we'll see what happens, and I hope you like it. Okay, so next is going to play the video, and then afterwards we'll have a quick chat about it. Okay, then here we go. I'm painting on Arch 140-pound paper. It's a nice paper to paint on, quite sort of forgiving, if you like. It's not stretched, and I am painting quite wet on this one, and it does cockle a little bit. It does move a little bit, the paper, but it's not too bad. I'm using cerulean blue here to paint the sky, and I'm just going to add a little bit of red to it to turn it grey, and that's just indicating the distant landmass on the other side of the water. I go on now to add a little bit of lemon yellow to the cerulean blue and the grey, and I get a nice sort of greeny colour. Add a little bit more yellow, and that makes it just where the water is starting to go shallow, you get that the water goes greener, and that indicates that. Moving on, and it will be a little bit of alizarin crimson, which is a great colour to use, and then I will go on to use Naples yellow, which is for the sand. Let it all bleed into one another, let those washes all drop down and mingle, and this painting's almost done. The first stage is all done wet into wet. I just keep painting. I don't wait for any of the stages to dry. You can see the edges are going pretty soft the minute I paint into them. I'm just using some burnt sienna here, lemon yellow, cobalt blue to make a green. Just painting, like I say, wet into wet. It's going to be a very loose painting, this. I'm not trying to sort of create a masterpiece or anything. It's just a sketch, but it's a good way, and this is what I suggest to free up a little bit, that people need to do. I spent no more than 30 minutes on this painting, but if you want to free up and get out of that habit of painting too much detail, attempting to paint too much detail, some people do it brilliantly, but if it's done badly, it looks bad. Is limit yourself to how long you've got to paint. You know, sit down with your phone, set it to 30 minutes, and say, I'm going to simplify this scene and paint it in 30 minutes. And that way, you know you've got a limited amount of time. You'll start with a biggish brush. Like look at the brush I've got there. It's quite a big brush. That's about size 10, I think, or 11, something like that. Some new brushes actually I bought when I stopped painting, but I never used them. They're a travel set. I'm not sure what the make is. I'll find out. But they're great, they are, and really point up well, and good for even the big brushes. Allow you to get detail. Now this area here is the distant land. Well, it's in the mid-ground sort of thing, not in the front, but it's kind of in the middle distance is the word I'm looking for. And just sort of like painting with various mixtures of blue, green, using the same blue, cobalt blue, with a little bit of red in it to grey it out a bit, a little bit of lemon yellow in the cobalt, and letting all those washes sort of bleed into one another. A little bit of burnt sienna in it there, which turns it a sort of a darker grey. Just experimenting, really. Just experiment with colour, and that's the quickest way to learning and improving your technique overall. Yeah, it's you can spend as much time as you like sort of painting detail and doing all those things, but until you get the colours right and the freedom right, and you sort of slot yourself into it, then you're going to struggle. So don't beat yourself up over detail. I wouldn't. I would just sort of look for the overall scene. You look at some of the best paintings done by some great artists, and they're simple. They look for overall shapes. They're looking for the shapes in the landmass. They're not looking for details. Not on a painting like this anyway. So I'm just adding a little bit more darker paint, a bit more blue to the shadows here, just to make it a bit richer and a bit more in depth there. and this is going to be painted really loosely. I don't want to spend a lot of time fiddling about with branches, and I just glanced at the photo before I started. I remembered it from last time I painted it, obviously with the oil painting. And because you paint something, it kind of imprints itself on your memory. It's a fantastic way of remembering things, what things look like. So I just had a quick glance, and I kind of left the photo to one side. And this is my interpretation of what I remember. Just using the brush, just starting off with more pressure, then releasing the pressure as I go up, letting the brush lift up off the page just to get those nice points. Obviously, it really does help to have a good brush. If you've got poor quality brushes, generally you're not going to be able to achieve an awful lot. Invest in a couple of good brushes to enable you to do that sort of thing, to get those finer points when you're painting. It will make life a lot easier, and it will show in your work basically. Which it will soon show. And I'm just sort of willy-nilly putting the branches in. Basically, I'm just looking for the overall balance. Now, when I think about it, I don't know if I did it right or wrong, but I'm trying to be spontaneous, I guess is the word. And in my little world, I'm trying to be creative, and that's what gives paintings the freshness, I think. It's when you think too long about it and you agonise over it, and I think that's when you lose that ability to create fresh work, basically. This isn't a great painting, although I did actually, overall I think I like this painting more than I do the oil, strangely. Once at the end, I'll take the tape off from around the edges, and that will reveal the painting properly and as it looks, because it looks messy like this where the paint's bleeding over the tape. But you'll see what I mean. It's it crispens it up, and it looks quite nice. So we put the branches in on the tree, just painting the distant land mass now. That's with a mixture just of cobalt blue, a touch of lemon yellow and a touch of red, I think. Excuse me. Just painting that in. Probably the leaves on the tree now, I would think. You see, it's such a simple sketch, and as I'll keep saying it, this is what you need to do to improve yourself. Don't try and do too much, basically. Keep it simple, I think, is the message. And I think that's how I learn. And most of the great artists, the really, really good ones, they'll all say the same. Keep it simple. Don't overthink it. Look for the overall shapes. And if you look at that, there's the foreground area, which is one shape. There's the tree, which is another. There's the middle ground, and there's the islands. There's about 4 or 5 different big shapes in that painting. And if you break it down to the shapes, then you're going to make life a lot easier for yourself. Now we're looking at, what are we looking at? We're just doing the foreground here. Didn't really spend a lot of time on this, and it's looking a bit messy, I would agree. But I was enjoying the process, and I think that's half the battle. Sometimes you don't do the best piece of work, but you enjoy painting it. And I think that is really what painting should all be about, because not every painting has to be something that you look at and go, oh my, that's my best painting. It's just all about enjoying the process and creating something. You start off with a blank piece of paper, then you end up with something that you can keep and treasure, or if you've got somebody that wants it, sell it to them, whatever it might be. But it's that there's nothing quite like creating your own paintings and creating art. I think it's a great feeling. So I'm fiddling about here, just starting to pop the trees in again. With the leaves, I'm not thinking an awful lot too much about it, just dropping them in willy-nilly. It's kind of late in the summer here, so there wasn't that many leaves on the tree. So I'm just putting a scattering of leaves in, just to so it doesn't look quite like too bare. I think when I look at the trunk of the tree stands out too much. I wish I'd been a bit more delicate with that. It looks just like a big black. It doesn't look like, it looks more like that on the camera, because you don't see the subtleties of the colours. There it just looks very hard, and that there's no branches covering it or anything, because of course there would be branches coming out this side as well. It doesn't show up very well, and it looks a little bit stark, I would agree. Would have done that differently. Maybe lift a bit of colour out. At this stage you could just get a nice clean damp brush and lift a bit of colour out to have some light patches in it. Just going over the here and there, messing about, probably totally unnecessary. This is probably one step too far. Often when I go outside painting, this is how I'll actually paint, basically. It's what I do. I paint it, just as quickly as this. I don't linger about with the watercolour. With the oils, I found I've been a lot slower outside. Okay, we're coming to the end now. Soon you'll see the painting without the tape round the side, and you can make your mind up on that, what you think. But it was an enjoyable process. I haven't really passed on any great information to you, but I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll be doing some more watercolours very soon. So we'll have a chat about the painting now. Okay then, there's the finished painting with the bit of tape taken off running outside. That always makes a difference once you've taken the tape away, tidies up the edges and sort of contains the painting. Yeah, with hindsight, this area here should have been a lot lighter, so it sits back further, because it's fighting with this. These two areas here are very similar in value, and you're not getting that difference in recession that there obviously is. This, again, it dried an awful lot lighter than I anticipated, and this should have been a lot more warmer, a lot more orangey reds in it. Really give it more vibrancy and brought it forward a bit more, so you would have got that feeling of this area here being set back. So it's all those little things. But for having not painted for crikey how long, watercolour for a fair old time, and we're talking 8-9 months possibly. Overall, I'm quite pleased. Let's put some more. Also, with this distant island here, this headland here, that should have been a lot paler. I think a little bit paler would have been good, and it would just set it back a little bit. But it was only a sketch. It was like a 30-minute painting. So I'm not just. I quite like it. I quite like the freshness of it, and for getting back into watercolour, it was a great exercise for me. So that's often a good way to go when you're painting, when you're learning to paint watercolour. Set yourself a time, 30 minutes. Do your painting within that time, and then you don't fiddle. And all you're going to be looking at, because if you get the colours close, but if you get the values right, that's the lights and the darks, you're going to be on your way to a successful painting. Okay, so be reasonably careful with the drawing. I don't follow pictures exactly, but I kind of just looked at the picture, then I drew it out. I didn't refer to it at all. I didn't want to be trying to copy it. So, but it's got the feel of the scene, if you know what I mean. But there we go. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, just like and subscribe, and ask any questions, and I'll do my best to answer. Give it a thumbs up and all that stuff. So thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll see you again next week for another video.